Stella maybe. And uh,
Hello.
all right, so we are live, and we have Mandy, Sarah, Amir. Amir and I are co-hosting this weekly SaaSy Saturday, and we should have Tom and Eddie jumping in here shortly. Should have, but so anyway, so we are talking about um, professionalism and Amir. What else are we talking about?
Punctuality.
Punctuality. So this kind of discussion kicked off, and I'm okay if the person that was involved with this is happens to be watching. But so there was a communication that had gone back and forth, and the entire time it was during a central time zone. So we had several communications, and I had indicated every single time that I am in the central time zone. So the situation is there was an interview that was set at 3:30 Central, and I said, "Hey, I have a situation pop up. Can we push this forward to 15 minutes? Meaning, can we go at 3:45?" And I said, "Can we go at 3:45?" And the person said yes. And I get a calendar invite that says 2:45, but if you scroll down, then it says 3:45 Central. And I'm like, okay, cool. So it's indicated that it's actually at 3:45 Central. And so I pop on at 3:45. Nobody shows up. It's fine. I understand people are busy. So at 3:55, when nobody else has showed up, I email the HR person. I said, hey, just out of curiosity, it's 3:55. It's 10 minutes past the interview time. Do we need to go ahead and reschedule this, or should I keep waiting? And I'm okay with either one of them. And the person responds with, "Oh, well, I set this up at 2:45 Central." So we all of a sudden went into an entire new time zone that we had not been discussing at all. And she said, "Well, if there's a miscommunication on the time zones, then we can go ahead and reschedule for next week." And so I responded with, "I apologize for any inconvenience in this."
Did you mean it though?
Okay, so did I respond in the way that I wanted to respond? Absolutely not. But responding in the way that I wanted to respond would not have gotten me the results that I wanted. So I responded politely that I apologize if there was a mistake on my end that allowed for miscommunication on time zones. I would appreciate if we can go ahead and reschedule an interview for the following week. And are my here's my availability in Central Time Zone. So, and I left it at that.
So, here's the question. Do you think it could have been handled better if you had mentioned the time zones all the time? You know, when you were confirming with the interviewer.
You know, absolutely. I could have said at that last time, "Hey, I noticed that this is scheduled for 2:45 Central, even though underneath the calendar invite you indicated is 3:45 Central. I just want to verify that the meeting is set at 3:45 Central." Now, my thought on this is if you and I have set a time zone and we are set on this time zone, and so you say, all right, we're going to meet at 3:30 Central. Okay, so we're meeting at 3:30 Central. I said, "Hey, Amir, I'm so sorry something's come up. Can we move this forward 15 minutes to 3:45?" And you say, "Yeah, absolutely. I get it. No problem at all." Why would you set it to a completely different time?
Yes.
That is my question.
What was the time zone of the person?
The time zone of the person is Eastern.
Yes. So that's an easy mistake to make then, right?
Yeah. So, and
I mean,
like,
who lives in Central anyway, except you?
well, no, it's funny you mentioned that, but most of the people that I have met are in Eastern time zone. I feel like I'm the only one that lives in a central time zone now at this point.
Okay. So here's a um, I don't think I've missed a meeting in the past 5 years. I might have, but when you're working with enterprise and stuff, it's the time zone of the person and the other person's convenience is always mentioned. Hey, this is set at 8 p.m. IST, or 1600 hours or whatever, but the time zones mentioned. And since the US has four time zones, right? I was dealing mainly with EST, but you'll say, hey, it's 8 a.m. EST. So it's very specific, and you'll always repeat that. The easy part is, of course, that it shows up in your calendar, your Google Calendar or whatever Outlook calendar that you're using. Um, but it's best to reconfirm. So I'm getting echo in this thing.
Well,
Someone
that's
on
why we should
speaker.
just move to military time and be. Yeah, I'm available for 0100. You know?
Which is fine. 100 is 1 a.m. in the morning. Um, but you do need to communicate what time zone you're in and reiterate that. And in this case, I think neither of you were at fault, because it's so easy to make an assumption that you're in the same time zone, or people are burdened with work, right? They could easily miss this. Same as you missed something, and the interviewer also missed something. So I get the pain point here. But I would say over communicate rather than under communicate. Hey, just to reconfirm, this is what my notes usually went as well. Just to reconfirm, we are meeting at this time zone as well, right? So just a short thing to keep in mind. Mandy, what are your thoughts?
I'm with you. I think that sometimes a mistake can happen one way or the other where it's not intentional, but I do understand the irritation with it. If you have continually mentioned multiple times throughout the conversation what your time zone is, it is a little bit odd that the person that's planning it then doesn't take that into account. But like you said, people are doing a lot of things all at once. And if you get distracted, it's definitely easy to revert to your own time zone out
And
of
I wonder
habit.
what was Josh doing at the time, though. He could just have reconfirmed.
I was busy. Okay, I'm
Really?
always busy. Yes, I'm always busy.
What with?
I mean, like, look, I was matching my shoes with my shirt because that is always important because I have this style that I have to maintain. And so, therefore, it is absolutely important that I present myself in a manner to which is up to date on current matching styles.
And that's good communication.
Sarah, don't you laugh at me, girl. I swear.
You're allowed,
I'm
Sarah.
not,
It's
I'm
okay.
always entertained. I'm always entertained. I'm proud of you for matching your shoes and your matching your shoes to your shirt, though. I'm proud of you
and,
for that
and my
because I know
belt.
you're busy.
Well, and so it's funny. So one of my students said, and this kind of blew my mind. They said, "Mr. Morgan, like you don't strike me as the type." And I go, "The type of what?" And he goes, "You know that like bats for the same team." And I go, "Bats for the same team?" He goes, "You know, like you would date like it's weird. But you match your clothes." And I go, "What does that even mean, John?" And he goes, well, okay, like your shoes and your belt match with your shirt. And that's unusual for straight guys to be able to match like that. I was like, what? I was, I was,
Is it?
I was raised by women my entire life, and I was taught that matching was important. So, I just like, yeah, he thought that he was like,
Agreed.
it's just weird that you match so well. Like your style, like you don't dress like the other English teachers. You don't have any cardigans. You don't have, he goes, when you wear your sweaters, they're always soft with like suede on your shoes. I go, well, John, I go, do you bat for the same team? He goes, no. I go, then why do you notice that so much? And he goes, you know what, Mr. Morgan, I'm not going to talk to you about this anymore.
Interesting.
Stereotypes, dude.
Yeah.
They're alive and well.
I mean, I know many people who do, dress well, so to say. Some people like that choice, and some others don't. It's nothing to do with orientation, I guess. But it's funny that you were picked out of the crowd as
Yeah.
an
Well,
English teacher.
and it's because like when I go to school, I have this fascination with shoes. Like I love shoes, absolutely love shoes. And so I often shop on Spiri, Dolce Gabbana, websites that I can't even pronounce because it's in Italian. I don't speak Italian, but they run these wonderful sales throughout the year. And I'm like, oh, these shoes were $2.25, but now they're on sale for $57, getting ready to go on style as they bring their new styles in, which means, okay, I don't have anything in my wardrobe that necessarily matches with these shoes, which means I need to go buy a couple shirts that match with these shoes. And they thought that was, I was like, I like shoes. It's not my fault that I like shoes.
Interesting. Imelda Marcos, the Philippine first lady, she had like 5,000 pairs of shoes. I heard.
I don't have
Wow.
quite that many. I have 47, but I don't.
Oh, God.
I
You're
mean,
getting there.
Mandy's jaw just dropped. Like, yes, but here's the thing. If you go to the outlet stores, you can buy 3 to 4 pairs of shoes for under $100. So if you do that several times a year, then for under $300 or $400, you can come in with 12 to 16 pairs of shoes. And so it's all about finding those like deals and discounts, because if you know that you're going to use them and you're going to buy them anyway, then you might as well get them on a discount. It's not like, I know my wife loves purses, and so she buys purses, but she, like, looking at the purses she uses, she's used like 3 purses in the entire last year. However, she owns about 40 different purses. Now, out of the shoes I have, like, I wear them on a weekly basis. So, I mean, we can battle on shoes.
That's not a
I'm not.
competition, though.
This was a discussion that we were supposed to have.
Not at all. Can't say that has anything to do with punctuality right there.
Well, no, it has
I-
Or maybe the professionalism of matching.
What? Because if you are not punctual to when the sale is happening, then you don't get the deals, and therefore
Fair
you don't
enough.
save the money. And if you don't save the money, the amount of money that I have saved purchasing when I do, has allowed us to buy a house because of the amount I've saved. And if I wouldn't have bought those,
I mean,
shoes,
wouldn't you have saved? Wouldn't you have saved more if you just didn't purchase them?
Amir, that's not the discussion we're having.
Josh said that's not an option, Amir. Sorry.
It's not. I mean, we were going to buy the shoes anyway because it won't happen. I prayed about it, and Jesus did not say no. So therefore,
Josh, can't with you.
As long as you don't hear those voices. So let's go back to your situation from yesterday. Was it?
yes.
So
So in hindsight, the whole problem could have been solved but I didn't feel that I need to. And I guess that is not necessarily the point, whether I feel like I should or shouldn't have had to. The point is if I had simply responded with, hey, I noticed this time, I want to make sure it's in this time zone, then all the entire situation could have been solved. The only thing that I don't really like about that, and again, it's just the way that it is, it puts all the responsibility on one person.
It's not about response. So as I said before, it takes two hands to clap, right? So it's not. I mean, you're irritated because this happened, but it's not someone's fault because they could have been. So here's the other thing that we were supposed to discuss today. It's about making assumptions. Um, so we don't make assumptions about the other person and what situation they could have been in. Um, I know you're doing something else and you expected to be in an interview or going forward into another round of interviews, but that didn't happen. But it's so easy to, you know, be in situations, and I've seen this so many times, even with groups of friends, that, people assume things about the other person without realizing that, something or the other could be happening with them. So it's just important to be very clear in your communication, even when you're following up later on. Hey, you could do this. Hey, notice that we missed this call, and never make it about you versus me. That is not professional, because ultimately you're there to work. So is the other person. Mistakes can happen. So the easy thing to do would be to say, hey, we missed this, and there was a mistake in the time zone, so it's not about you or me. Could we reschedule or something? That would be the better way to do that. In your case, there was no need to apologize, because um, it wasn't really something did either they or you did deliberately. But this is just something to think of, that don't make assumptions, one, and be over communicative in these small things, especially initially.
Yeah, and I said, hey, be and I think part of that goes to the goodwill. You want to make sure the other person that is receiving the message, because you are asking them for something, which is to reschedule the event. And so, while I didn't necessarily feel like the fault was on my end, the PR side of me said, it's better if you extend the goodwill and say, hey, I apologize if I caused anything to lead to a miscommunication, because maybe I did. I don't know. And then, if nothing else, the other person goes, okay, well, it creates a feel good situation, at least in my head.
Yep. I mean, I have
Sarah,
nothing to add.
Sarah,
Go on.
what problems have you had lately? I know you have teenage boys, so aside from um, teenage boy problems, what other problems are you having?
Trying to figure out how to feed them all. To go back to what you said, I always, there was a lot of posts yesterday and today about kindness and empathy. I was seeing a lot of, which I always, of course, enjoy, but to tie into what you were just talking about, either way, responding with that and not making an assumption that, to tie into your assumptions, that it was something, personal or um, purposeful. So I was enjoying all of those posts about kindness, and just either way responding. I've had that happen once, and I think it was just miscommunication. And so I'm very paranoid about missing meetings, and I'm always double checking before. Okay, what is the time zone again? And let me just check. But mistakes happen, and so responding, I think that way, um, is always best. So.
No, that's good. And I was a slight bit overwhelmed because that was my fifth interview of the day.
Yeah.
So, there was a lot of back and forth on that. So, when I was communicating, and there was a couple times where before I sent the email, I had to like open another window, make sure I'm talking to the right person, to make sure I'm not like responding to the wrong person at the wrong company with the wrong name. Because the last thing, like Sarah, if I'm responding to you, the last thing I want to do is like, let's say I'm talking to Sarah and Mandy. Last thing I want to do when I'm talking to Sarah is go, all right, thanks, Mandy. And then you go, wait a minute, that's not even my name, and then you, yeah. So
Yeah, that's a lot to
I mean,
balance. That's stressful. And so that's that's a lot for sure. So mistakes happen.
mistakes happen too often with Josh, though.
no, that's not true. Listen, all I'm saying is that blue and brown go well together.
They don't.
They don't do that. Yeah.
No, you're not supposed to take black and blue unless it's a Carolina blue to like a pitch black. But you
Okay.
can take so.
Um, Mandy, how would you say communication in a larger company works? I know you've worked with large teams before, so when you got multiple team members, doing their thing, it's not just about meetings, right? It's about communicating clearly, and um, you know, I'll talk about project management after this. But how do you communicate well with large teams?
I think it can be really challenging, honestly. Um, I like to communicate through writing, just because that way people can refer back to it, or if they're busy and they get interrupted, they have a form of, a frame of reference. So even when I do meetings in person, I still like to do a follow up in writing, just so you have a touch point. So I think that that's something that's worked for me mainly when dealing with larger groups, but it kind of depends a little bit on who's in the group and how they like to be communicated with. Something that I have found is that tone makes such a huge difference, and that sometimes doing something live lands so much better than in writing, especially if you have to do something, something that I found with me personally. I'm very, very detail oriented and process driven. And so when I give somebody constructive criticism, sometimes they can feel very like I'm upset with them, or they can feel almost like I'm berating them because I break it down incrementally. And I found that when I talk to people individually, they hear my tone, they see my face, and they know that I'm not upset, that I'm just, I want them to get better and I want to support them in getting better. Whereas sometimes in the writing, because it's like, oh, here's a screenshot and here's like how you do it better, that they're like, oh my God, Mandy, why did you have to write this out like this? Like, why did it have to be a page and a half? So like, I think that the way that you communicate can definitely, even though you're the one that's doing all the communicating, it's still how it gets received or how people perceive what you're sharing with them can vary greatly depending on your method of delivery.
I think
Amazing point. Josh, here's the thing. Okay, you're asking something or saying something. I,
well, I
I'll
was
add
going
to
to
that.
say, I was in a situation the other day similar to what Mandy is talking about, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to integrate the Microsoft Calendar with the Google Calendar, so I just have one calendar that overall, like I have my separate calendars, but I like one calendar that has everything from the morning all the way to the evening, you know." And so their response was, "Well, if you're going to do that, I'm not going to help you at all." And I was a bit taken aback by like the tone of it, and I wasn't even asking for help on it. Like they asked what I was doing, and I just said, here's what I'm doing," and the response was, "Well, if you're going to do that, I'm not going to help you." Okay, well, one, I wasn't asking for your help in anything, and number two, and so my response was, well, I get that. I'm not asking for help, but I like one general calendar, and then I like separate calendars. So like I have one general calendar that shows, and it has everything that I'm doing for the school. It has everything I'm doing in my personal time. It has everything that I'm doing for podcasts. Like it just has everything because it's easier that way to schedule sometimes. So if Amir and I want to have a chat, and I go, "Hey, here's my calendar," he can pick some time. Like I have everything on my calendar. He can pick a time that's convenient for him for what I have available, right? And I said, well, okay. I said, I'm not asking for help. I was just telling you, you asked what I was doing, and I'm just like mentioning what I'm doing. And they said, well, I'm just telling you that I'm not going to help you with that. And like I was so taken aback by the tone of it. I was like, and I just
Was this in writing on a messenger or something,
no,
or
this
via voice?
no voice. Like we were having a virtual one-on-one. And and it wasn't even part of the meeting. It was kind of like, hey, what's going on? Hey, Amir, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. I'm getting ready to like go out to the park to fly a kite with my kids. What are you doing? Oh, I'm integrating my calendar. Like that was like the context of the conversation. It
Interesting.
wasn't, yeah. And
Okay.
so I was so taken aback by like the tone of it. I was like, okay,
Did,
that's
did you follow up and ask why they said that though?
um
No.
No, because without
Okay.
like, if I give too much more information, it'll kind of give away like the context and the person, and I don't want to like give
Okay.
that away. Yeah,
So here's the thing. Jessie is not here today, but there was an instance where she felt she didn't like something that I said, but which was unintentional, right? But
right,
she reached out to me later on, and we spoke about that. So
right,
again, that's about communicating and over communicating. Hey, Amir, I didn't like what you said, and I was like, okay, I didn't even know that I said something like this, and uh, what offended you, so I could take care of that in the future, and we were cool with that, right? So no offense taken, two good friends communicating. It doesn't happen in a lot of cases, but these days I over communicate rather than under communicate, so that mistakes don't happen, assumptions don't happen, and relationships don't break. As simple as, I mean, it's okay with so here, I was going to talk straight after Mandy's comments. Um, when you type in stuff in a chat, it comes across as very different, and the tonality might be very different as to, and that's why I asked you, Josh, that was that over voice or in a chat. So me and my now ex-colleague Amruta, we got along famously well at my previous company. We're good friends for 5 years, and it takes a lot to be a good friend, a colleague, and so we could recognize each other's tonality even on Skype or whatever communication medium we used, right? But even so, there were times when we used to, have an argument, a friendly argument. So, for example, hey, you didn't get this done, would be the statement from me or Amruta. And then later on, when we would have the call, why did you, tell me this, or, get it done, what do you mean? I said, no, not this way. Or I would probably get annoyed and scold her for something. Thanks, Jesse, nice.
yeah. And I want to
uh,
say, sorry, Amir, but Jesse Romero is freaking fantastic. So I don't know if you haven't had a chance to chat with Jesse. He's over at Smart Commerce,
sure,
and like he
get
is,
him on.
yeah, within like he's just really, really, really good. And if anybody that's watching this wants what needs a mentor and within the sales community, Jesse is fantastic at that. Super, yeah.
Could you give him the link while we he's not connected to me, he can join the live. So I was saying, so tonality is very easy to be, mistaken or misunderstood when you're typing and stuff. It's best to communicate things via voice or, face to face, and go from there. So I mean, I've lost count of the number of times that an email comes across with the wrong tonality, and you feel the other person's trying to scold you or argue with you or make assumptions about you, whereas that's not the case. And it's even more important when you're working with multiple teams at the same time, because you won't have time to type more than like 3 or 4 lines. And um, you might not notice this now, but going forward, if you're working with a bunch of teams and a bunch of people, typically leadership higher up will just have 3 or 4 lines for you, not a detailed list of paragraphs. They'll just say, "Hey, can you get this done? I need X, Y, and Z done." But that's something to be aware of, and they don't mean anything by it. They're not, um, trying to scold you or do stuff with you. It's just that they don't have the time to elaborate and have a one-on-one with you about what sort of tasks you should be accomplishing.
Well, and some of that is we all have different communication styles. So some people are very like to the point, very abrupt, which can to somebody that is, more of an empath, more they can almost like, why were you being very aggressive towards me? Like you can get your feelings hurt. And the other person is just like, hey, here A, B, and C, and that's the way it is. And so it's I think that like Amir, like you're talking, I think that that's it's important to if you feel offended by somebody to obviously, relationship is important in the context. So if Amir says something to me that I find kind of offensive or the tone, I go, hey, Amir, I want to make sure that because sometimes like if Amir, like I feel like, okay, so here's an example. I reached out to somebody and it's a mutual friend of Amir's and and the way they responded to me, like I was kind of taken aback in like the way they responded. And so I talked to Amir about it and he's like, well, he goes, do you want them to respond nicely to you or do you want them to be honest with you? And in my brain, I'm like, yeah, but there has to be at a certain point a kind of a middle ground between being like brutally honest and also not and like so without giving too much away, I said I was talking about SaaS and stability, and their response was like, "Are you kidding me? SaaS and stability, give me a break. This is dumb." And he goes, "If you like, you're picking the wrong profession if that's what you're looking for." And it was like I was like, "Dang!" Like, I was just like, I was, I was asking a simple.
But you asked me the same thing, and I was the same way. I said he is absolutely right. Now, do you want someone to give you those little candies? Hey, SAS is beautiful. Come join us like all the
No,
others.
no,
I'm sending you a bucket of energy right here. You'll enjoy this sweet bucket, and you'll
No,
you
but
know
the way you responded was different. You said if you want stability more, look at a government job. If SaaS is not stable. So it was like it was the same message that he did, but it was in a totally different way. It wasn't like, "Are you kidding me? This is stupid. Like go look at something else." And I was like, it almost felt like I was like those old like mafia movies where they like, hey kid, why are you so stupid? You gotta like you're like, oh okay, okay. So
but here's the thing, Josh. The circles you're in now, people know that you've been in these circles for like 5 or 6 months, right? And you know the ins and out. And if you ask a silly question, you'll get a silly answer.
well, and so it's funny because like at the time, so and here was the question, and I'll tell you the question. Um, is it better not to go into a SaaS because of the number of layoffs some companies are having versus looking at non-SaaS companies? And
Right.
and that was the question. So Amir was very, very honest about it, but his approach was, well, look, if you go into SaaS, you are probably sacrificing stability for a bigger paycheck. If you want to make
Mhm.
okay money but have stability, go into government. Okay, great. Versus going, if Amir had said, "Oh my God, Josh, that's a stupid question. Like, it's ridiculous. Why are you asking me this?" That's a totally different message. And then so I was just like, um, Okay, well, I'm not gonna ask this question again.
I gotta agree with Josh on that one. I think with that question, it's different. I think, Amir, I agree with you in that if he said something like, well, SaaS is really stable, and you're like, really? Like, you've been with these people for 6 months, you know this is not true. Like, that's dumb. Like, that's one thing. But if you're asking a question of, hey, if stability is your game, like, should you even look at SaaS or should you do something else? And the person answers you with both options, that's a good answer. Somebody that's saying like, oh, that's really dumb, like I can totally understand as the question asker that you're like, oh, that felt harsh. Like,
Well,
it's not that it's not true that SaaS is an unstable like
Yeah.
that. I totally understand that that's true. That's real.
yeah,
But
and Mandy, you're right. That was my point. Was the way Amir answered it. I was like, okay, I get it. Versus the way the other person answered it.
But I answered the same way, Josh. If you listen to my voice note, what do you expect, dude? I mean, are you nuts? Is what I probably said. So I think you treat some people nicer than others, is what's happening. Joking.
You know what? You might be right. Look at like if you're
So here's the thing. Again, let me go back to my earlier, comment on communication and how some people don't have the time to, communicate in detail, and other people might not have the empathy for your sort of statement. Is what I'll say. For example, I know you get annoyed at some transitioning teachers these days, as do a lot of other people. But why is that? Because of those repeated questions, or repetitive motivational posts, or buckets of energy. For example, I assured that Josh has been looking for buckets of energy. By the way, I've been trying to send
no.
them to him. So he got a jolt trying to poke that energy thing sometime. So
No. So, you know what? And here's where, and I just choose not to say things sometimes because I know what I'm going to say is going to come off as hurtful. So, like in my class,
okay, no. Here's the thing. To people right? Mandy or Sarah or Josh or Jesse, Eddie, Tom, others, you can actually speak your mind and have a good dialogue. With people you don't know, you might tread carefully and communicate in a different manner. You try to find out the intent behind what they're asking and the way you want to respond. Now if it's someone as loopy as sending buckets of energy, I would just keep away from that sort of stuff, because I've got nothing meaningful to contribute there, right? But if there are other people, for example, Brian, he was looking for some project management stuff and all. You'd interact with them, discuss things with them, make sure it's something helpful for them, and go from there. So I think it depends on the situation and the context of what you're doing with them, and that's part of communicating as well.
I do think that, like what Josh mentioned in the very beginning about different people having different communication styles, like that is something that I've spent a large
Yes.
part of my life studying, and it's a topic I'm super passionate about because I used to be. If any of you guys are used to a DISC assessment, so like you've got super direct, you've got influencers, you've got steady and consistent, and so I was very much a director, super straight shooter, like blunt as all get out. Because I was like, who has time to like sugarcoat stuff? Like we've just got stuff to do, and like we're all adults, right? So let's just say what we mean. Boy, did I realize that does not work. It does not work a lot of the time, and it is very hard to lead teams when you are that direct, because you almost always piss somebody off or hurt their feelings, one or the other. So like over time, I ended up changing my communication style a lot. And now I'm more of an influencer than direct, but my underlying, especially like if I'm impatient or upset, I'm still direct. Like that's still a core of what I do. But like to what you and Josh are saying with like how people approach you, like the example I always give of when I was direct, like if somebody was like, does this dress make my butt look big? when I was direct, I'd be like, absolutely, you shouldn't wear that. That's real ugly. Now, in fairness, totally my opinion, and you asked. Like, I didn't just throw it out there, you asked, and that's my response. Now, as an influencer, I'd be like, okay, so you tried on 2 dresses. I think you look really great in the other one.
You mean you wouldn't go, well, it's not really the dress.
No, I would not. We're not being mean. But yeah, but I mean, like, you're still telling the truth. Like, you're still saying, I like the other dress better. You're just not bluntly saying, oh, yeah, that you just added like 20 pounds. Never wear that.
You know,
And to that point about leadership is leading with empathy is the main thing, right? So how do you lift people up rather than push them down should be, uh, what Josh was talking about earlier was communication with a friend, right? And he was answered a bit bluntly. But when you're leading, I think there's no, room for personal stuff in there. You lead with empathy, and you can't afford to be rude and unprofessional with people, even though
Right.
you might not want to do that thing. In that case, um, you might choose the easier, hey, I don't think that's gonna work, versus that's a bullshit idea,
Right.
well,
Exactly.
yeah, and so I'll be honest, like after I thought about it for a while, because I didn't go back and go, oh, you hurt my feelings in the way that you said blah blah blah. I thought about it for a while, and like I went to a mirror and I said, hey, am I, because I wanted to, number one, am I just being, and I hate to say this, am I being overly emotional about something that is not worth getting like emotional about? It's not like my spouse called me ugly. You know what I mean? I was asking a question of a friend. They were very like, their way of replying is very blunt and can hurt people's feelings, but like it's just the way they respond. So I reached out to a mirror, and I didn't respond to the original person, because if I would have responded to the original person, I'd have been like, well, that was so rude. Which, number one, is it worth me saying something? Because then if they're going to respond to that and go, hey, if you don't want to hear the truth, don't talk to me, which would essentially possibly ruin an entire friendship, right? So it wasn't worth that. So Amir kind of broke it down. He's like, hey, this is just kind of the way it is. But the way Amir broke it down was like not nearly as like in your face, like, hey, does this dress make my butt look big? And they go, my God, can your butt get any bigger than that? Jesus Christ. That kind of response. So I had to think about, wait, how could I have asked this question better to get a more response? Which then I reframed the question of, what is the difference between SaaS companies that are not doing layoffs versus and continuing to grow, versus SaaS companies that are like, oh, we just had to cut 400 people, we just had to cut 89 people, we just had to cut. So I think that was really the original. My what I was thinking about was, when you're looking at companies to go apply for, what should I be looking for that makes one company that is successful
Yep.
versus one company that is not successful, and what you need. So in some ways, I mean, it was a good that he responded that way, because it gave me a chance to go, okay, well, he didn't give me the response that I wanted. So maybe the question that I asked is not the question that I needed to ask. And how can I rephrase this question?
Awesome. That's awesome. You wanted to say something, Sarah? Go on.
Well, I had two things. One, what I was thinking about is kind of understanding your the person you're talking to, the source. So Amir might say things maybe the same way, but it might sound differently, even like in a text or a chat. But understanding is the other person, maybe somebody who's just always more direct and always a little bit kind of blunt and to the point, is that, and so I, of course, always feel in a text like tone is so important, but sometimes it's hard to read, and sometimes I even question like, oh, wait, did they mean that in a negative way, or were they mad at me, or and so I actually had that this week where I thought, hey, I hope like you can always, I can take feedback if there's something that I wrote or said different, like are we good, or just let me know. And they're like, oh yeah, and I'm like, I just sometimes tone is hard when you're not talking. It's easy to understand when you're speaking. And the second was, it's funny that this past week I spent training with staff and students, and the topic was tone, the difference between assertive and aggressive tone. If you're being aggressive or assertive, and then teaching them to read, when do people hear you? If you want someone, so in talking about empathy and leadership, being a leader and really leading well and making sure people are hearing you, tone is just, it's always so important. And so to lead with that,
Always.
it's
Yes.
so it's
Ricky is a great example of tone.
yeah.
Well, and Amir, I'm glad you said that because, and I know this will sound like I always talk about his accent, right? And so I feel like Ricky is one of those coming from, and as an American, where we kind of romanticize the accents of people in other countries. Like Ricky could say, you're the worst person in the entire world, but in his accent, you'd go, oh, say it again. I love it.
So you don't like your own countrymen then, Josh?
No, absolutely not. They're terrible. Like Sarah talks all the time, and I'm like, okay, guidance counselor, relax. So no, I'm just no.
We're watching you, Josh.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get back to this one, because there's a question of stability. I wrote a post about that. Now, Alan Adler, who Eric Steves recommends, and I've spoken to a couple of times on LinkedIn, is into ecosystems and all of this stuff. What's happening is there's a bubble happening. It's not just a stock market bubble, but it's happening across industries, right? Um, there was a lot of funding going on in startups over the past year. Josh dropped, it seems. Um, so what happened with this funding was, the, Josh, you're playing around. Never mind. Um, so what was happening is, there's a lot of funding going on in startups, but at the same time, how does a startup succeed? They have to have a product market fit. They have to have good marketing. They need to sell their product as well. Companies like Fast, for example, this company, laid off its entire workforce. I don't know, thousands of people. They didn't even have a product or any recurring revenue. So when you're looking for stability, look at even startups can be stable, but you need to look at startups which have some recurring revenue. They have a proven product, they have some clients, and they are doing well in the space. It's not and absolutely, I would say avoid companies that say we are hiring for 4,000 people or 3,000 people or stuff like that, because they are on a cash burn at that time. So what happens is they'll take you on, but you might be let go when the board decides that they need to be profitable rather than have all that extra baggage. I don't like the term baggage, but that's what it is for them. The other way to look at stability in a company is, and it's not always true. You could have enterprise companies, large enterprise, Accenture or Deloitte have thousands of jobs all the time, but they are stable companies. They have their sets of clients, and you don't go wrong with them. And I would say the jobs with them are slightly less challenging than in a SaaS. Again, it depends on what departments you're going into. If you're going to analytics and artificial intelligence within those companies, it's going to be real fun. But I don't think enterprise has a lot of CSM rules and stuff. I mean, they are catching on, but it depends. Those are going to be more stable. So look at large enterprise, Fortune 500, 5,000 companies for stability. Startups will typically need people who can do a lot of work in different areas and can sell and do a lot of things. And as always, you are as stable as your performance. If you can't do well in a startup. If you think you can laze around, it's not going to work, especially in like small companies of 25 to 50 people. uh, there's just an added burden on you regardless, and you need to keep working to keep the company running and have them keep depending on you. So that's going to happen. Josh.
Well, I mean, and that's no, I don't disagree with you because um, you kind of have to ask yourself, do you want it? And excuse my language here, but do you want it balls to the wall, or do you want something a little bit more narrowly defined where there's a lot of mentoring and coaching? And so, like the situation I'm in where I have a choice between, hey, like your feet are going to be on the fire, or as I think the phrase is actually termed, you have to build the plane while you're flying the plane, versus do you want somebody that's going to be able to kind of mentor you and help you so that you have that, we call it like that 30, 60, 90 days of kind of like onboarding and success, or do you just want to be like tossed to the fire immediately and hey, you better go. So
Startups do have onboarding as well. It's not that they don't, right? Even smaller companies will have a process built and some onboarding happening. And it depends on what role you're going in for. If you're going to do sales demos or CSM, you'll likely be introduced to the platform. If you are doing marketing, then it's a different ball game altogether. They'll expect you to know some of marketing and stuff. And if you're doing development, then obviously you're going to do development, and you need to know, whatever stack they're using for development.
well, and that almost kind of goes back to like it's funny how like we can show these conversations that kind of like go in a circle, but it goes back to our friend that was preaching like transitioning teachers shouldn't have to take entry level jobs because we are motivated and blah blah blah. But the thing is like especially in the startup level, if you want to talk about mid-level management, like they're going to expect you to have at least a certain
Yes.
understanding of whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce or a certain CRM. And if you just march in there like, hey, I'm a transitioning teacher and I can do anything, and they go, great, Josh, here are all your responsibilities, and you go, oh, but wait a minute, like I don't understand this, and they'll go, yeah, but you said you could do anything, so what's the
But you could learn this in 20 minutes or less, right?
you could do the job of 30 CEOs is all I'm saying.
Not me.
So, Mandy and Sarah, I don't know if you saw it, but like in our Amir and I's journey, as he sends me, we send each other screenshots of different posts that we see that we go, whew, really? You posted that? So we've seen,
It's more accusatory for me, Josh. I mean, I'm
I
like,
know.
dude, what's your tribe doing?
I listen. My tribe is you, Mandy, Sarah, Tom, Jesse. Even though he hurt my feelings, but that's okay. I'll get over it. Eddie, no, that's my tribe. But like so, and I kind of joke about this. In fact, I talked to I had a really wonderful conversation earlier with Nils, and he's a product manager, and he has been in product management for 27 years. He got in product management when they didn't have a definition for the title. Nobody really knew what they were doing. And so that's what he was kind of talking about. He was, we got into that discussion of, um, you know, understanding the role in which you're applying for. And he goes let me give you an example. He goes, I go on LinkedIn, there's a product management position available, and he goes, it says, and he goes, I have books published on product management, like I'm like a leader in the field, I have over 25 years of experience. And he goes, I get on there, and he goes, I'm only in the top 25%. He goes, so that means that if 200 people apply for this, there are still 50 people that might be better at this job than I am. And he goes, and so we get into the problem of not being able to, like, you don't understand, so you can't translate, so you can't compete with the people. But like, I mean, it goes back to, like the one that like blows my mind was the art teacher. And I'm surprised I haven't gotten a hate message for this, but they said, "Hey, I'm an art teacher, and I had 160 kids last year create an art project, and I manage that, so that would mean that I'm a great project manager." And we go, "But that's not project management." And so Amir's head like goes like it blows up, and he's like, "Jeez." Like, so we have this.
No, so the intent there is like, you shouldn't be writing titles about what you are not on LinkedIn. People write product managers or project managers or this or that, but first get the role and do some work. Be hired by the company for that role, and then write your project manager or something, right?
Well,
That's
and
all I'm saying.
no, I my discussion with him this morning, because we were talking about content creation. I said, one of my 3 to 5 year goals is to look at product management. I said, but it would be easier for me to get into a company and kind of work my way into that role. I said, now that being said, it's I haven't taken the time to create a network of product managers. I haven't read any books on product management. I haven't done any. I don't listen to podcasts on product management. Like, I haven't done anything to set myself to being knowledgeable in the product management like sphere. And so, I mean, I think that is also important. Is if you're going to go after a certain field, is when they ask you like, why do you want to do product management, like, you have to be able to answer with
Because
authority.
it pays more.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely right, it does, especially if.
So I know a lot of good product managers. One of my friends is working for Meta now. Another heads a large company, and he's heading the product department there. And so it's not all that it's cracked out to be. It's a lot of project stuff as well. Product has become a niche for the past few years. Um, I won't go into product management, but I think maybe we'll invite someone in the next couple of weeks, and they can talk about product and what it takes to be a good product manager.
I would make a great technical product manager right now, because
Anyone could.
yeah, I don't know any.
Anyone could. Let me be frank. Product management is a cool thing. I mean, all it see unless you're coding, you're doing C sharp or C plus plus or Python or something, or you're working with different tech stacks for the coding environment. Managing product, managing projects is straightforward, but you need to have that strategic skill set that so many
Oh,
seem to say they have.
Amir, it's funny you mentioned that, because I give my students C's and C plus and C plus plus all the time. So obviously, I'm familiar with that programming language, because I give my students those grades all the time.
Sure.
No, no.
No.
I mean, out of interest, it's something that students should be doing, and pushing people to code is something that I always try and do. I mean, I haven't done. I used to do coding a long time ago, but if you want to build a SaaS, you want to build a startup, and you want to raise money down the line, the best way to do is know the building blocks of a SaaS, which is development. It's not even too difficult. Once you and there are a lot of no code tools available to these days. I wrote a post about that. Jesse O is one of the best mentors for that sort of thing. um, so it's something that we should be imparting to youngsters as well, that learn some coding. And here's the other thing. BI tools, that's business intelligence tools like Tableau or Power BI or R or whatever it is. You want to do analytics. It's very, I won't say use the word easy. I mean, you can do that with experience, but it's another great component. What I see is that I'm just talking about educators here, but it also applies to a lot of other people who are searching for jobs. They try and find these three niche things. I can be a CSM, or I can be an SDR, or I can go into account management or something. But there are so many other options to explore. If you're good with math, why not explore analytics? It's people hire for analytics. If you got me and Mandy were talking about something else. If you got some other sorts of skills, why not explore those skills in other job titles or roles? Because who knows, you could find that niche, and fewer people are applying within those roles. And you have so um, a CSM might have 150 applicants, but if you're going into an analytics role or something, there might only be 20 to 25 applicants, and you've got a greater chance of being hired for that role.
Well, and there's also, I mean, we could talk about, like, especially within the educators, is that if you're only focusing on ed tech, you're also competing with the other 10,000. Because I look at I look at roles on LinkedIn, and if you look at, like, for example, like, we can talk about customer success manager. If you look at non-ed tech versus ed tech, the ones in non-ed tech, unless they're like a big company that everybody wants to work at, that competition is so much lower than, because I just like the other day I plugged in customer success manager, remote last, week, and I just left it at that. And there was like 2,752 job openings, mainly at places that we've never heard of, that are thriving and doing great, but we just don't know. But you have the same people that are targeting, such as Amplify and Ed Momentum, and like the same companies.
I think there's an effect of the same groups as well. I think Brian wrote about it yesterday or day before. I think you shared something about that. So if you're in the same groups, it's going to be the same opinion and the same advice.
Yeah, honestly, I've had far more success with non-ed tech companies than I have had ed tech companies. And it's mainly, I just don't want to. It's not that I'm not competitive, but if I can find a place that only 22 people have applied versus 400 people that have applied, I'm going to go compete against 22 and not the 400. Like I just don't even, like, I'm not going to mess with that. But yeah, and so it's messy.
Let's continue this next time as well. Jobs in the tech sectors versus other sectors. I think that should be interesting. What topics do you think we should talk about, Sarah, next time?
So many.
Go on.
I was just thinking, though, as you were talking about the number of applicants, not necessarily even just teachers, but obviously there's a lot of them applying for a lot of the same jobs, but the focus on how to stand out too, because I think going back to, like, oh, okay, well, I already make 50 calls a day. I'd probably be a great SDR. I make 10,000 decisions a day, so I would be a great project manager or whatever. I think, though, obviously, people being open to, you have to realize and listen to feedback, but really do research, because I think when you're outside of a field trying to break into a new one, you really do not know what that looks like, and you don't know what that feels like. And what I think that you're just reading job descriptions, for me, doesn't tell me what I need to talk to people and know what is this going to look like. And so doing your research, but also trying to approach things differently to stand out among those hundreds or thousands of applicants. So I was thinking about that as you guys were talking, but also
I
being
think that's a
open to
great
feedback,
point.
being open-minded, because there are, I think, a lot who do that. And then there are just as many who have this expectation of where they should be, without doing that research. So I think the ones who do the research, though, find the jobs, the
Um,
ones.
So Sarah, I apologize. I started laughing. I know Amir kind of giggled about it because he sent me over a post, and it was like there was a teacher that was like, "I do."
Was it my post? Was it my?
No, it was somebody else, and they did like I make 20,000 decisions a day, and
2000.
yeah,
That's why I said that. I saw that. I think I saw the post.
and so Amir was like, "Damn, that's 1,900 more decisions than I make a day." And so there does tend to be by some people kind of this over exaggeration, and like, look, I'm 16 years in teaching, so I can call a spade when I see it. And if you're telling me you make 2,000 decisions a day, I'm gonna say no, you don't. Like, you make a lot, I get it, but everybody in their professional, Mandy, every minute has to make, a few decisions. Within the hour, she's had to make probably 50 to 60 decisions. I'm just like spitballing a number out here, but like as a teacher, it's not like I'm making more decisions than Mandy has to. Maybe I have more like people that I'm directly responsible for, not like attacking each other and throwing paper at each other's head and things like that. But that's what we're kind of laughing about that scenario.
2000 decisions is a bit much.
Yeah,
I mean, you do keep making decisions all the time about whether we should turn the live off, or that's going to be a decision. I mean, whether Josh is going to get offended or something. Do I talk to him about that? That's another decision. But yeah, so brain keeps making those decisions. But the point is, what percentage of those decisions are actionable decisions? For example, if you're in a meeting, what are the takeaways from the meeting? Hey, you repeat those decisions, and and this also ties into my question to Mandy earlier. How do you deal with large teams? So we'll end with communication, I guess. So what you do is, whatever decisions you make with the other stakeholders is, um, you list them out. Hey, we discussed A, B, C, and D in the meeting today. These are our to dos, and this is what the development team will action. This is what you are going to do. You're going to talk to the sales VP or your stakeholder and come back with something. Someone here is going to look at the dashboard for you and solve this issue. So here are our three takeaways, and these are the decisions that you made during that meeting, and those are the ones that you will be actioning. So again, that's communicating. Mandy, takeaways from you before we drop.
Well, just for potential conversations for the future, I like the one on communication. I think that that's a really meaty topic, because I think talking about personalities in general is a great topic. It's one that a lot of people are interested in, but also I think that different industries favor different assessments. So, like, some people it's Harrison assessment, sometimes it's DISC, sometimes it's Meyer-Briggs, and each one of them kind of break down information similarly but differently. And some of these assessments are actually part of getting a job, like they're now part of the interview process. So I think talking about that could be interesting, talking about communication in general, because different industries also prefer different types of things. I think that's kind of an interesting topic. But
Absolutely. I think that should be a good one for the next time.
I like that. I like that.
We'll stay on while the live ends. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll let Josh say goodbye.
Okay. Well,
Don't be offended though, Josh.
no, I was gonna do like from
With an arrow in there.
yes.
That hurt arrow.
Yeah.
God,
So
you hurt me. You hurt my feelings. You hurt me. Jesse, don't do that, please. You hurt me.
I'm gonna give you a big hug, Amira. It'll be fine. So, from our house to yours, this holiday seasons, we we love you all, and we'll see you next Saturday.
I'm not gonna freeze my face. I'll keep talking while Jesse disconnects. Sorry, Josh disconnects.